Hello and welcome to Some of My Friends Read Comics. We've got Vance.
The boys. What you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you?
We've got Chris.
American cunt.
Oh wow! Hi. Whoa,
That's me.
The seal.
Oh boy, and I'm Kia. Welcome. I don't know how I'm gonna follow that. Welcome to the show. Today we are reading The Boys by Garth Ennis. So recently, season 2 just started of the show? Was it Amazon?
A couple weeks ago. Yeah, it's actually airing weekly as opposed to like a full drop, which usually means that the streaming service has some confidence in it.
And the show is popular.
Yeah, and it's good. It's really good. I really like the show. It's really good.
I have not seen the show. I had not read the comics. We'll get into the comics soon. Well, later we're going to talk about Squadron Supreme #2. We're continuing our long read of that. We started issue #1 last time. But all right, back to The Boys here. Garth Ennis, kind of know what you're getting into with him. Famous for The Punisher, Preacher. Those are his two big ones. Yeah.
Those are the two big ones that most people would know. He did do some Hellblazer, but yeah, those are probably the most things that people would know him from.
Yeah. So this book is
he's either British or Scottish, so it's going to be a little uncouth. This is very uncouth. It's going to be hyper violent. It's usually like tongue in cheek silly. It's not like rah 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 like violence for violence sake. It's usually him trying to do some humorous over the top violence. Sometimes it hits, sometimes it misses. His Punisher Max run and the Punisher run with Steve Dillon, I fucking love.
Well, I definitely want to talk about.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I think it's problematic, but I also feel like it's a lot of fun if you view it as like a power fantasy can't work in the real world. That Punisher is a lot of fun. Don't idolize the Punisher, but.
I might be putting the cart before the horse here. But I do want to compare his work with the Punisher and this and everything eventually. But there's no likable characters throughout this entire thing. I'm wondering if that's why the Punisher works, because he doesn't attempt to give the Punisher any character, and just lets him be the reader killing off all the bad guys.
Yep.
Whereas here he's trying to tell a story and it's all bad guys because that's all he knows how to write. And I'm just like, what am I doing? Why am I reading this? I had a hard time finishing this, to be honest. It was a pretty breezy read, but let's get into it.
Art by Darick Robertson.
The art works well. Did Darick Robertson do?
We said Transmet. He did Transmetropolitan.
That's right.
And he did some other book that I hadn't read. But my prediction that I said is I've never read The Boys, but I'm assuming because it's Darick Robertson art, there's going to be a lot of exploded heads. And literally the first page is an exploded head. So I feel like I won. Good job.
Yeah.
I felt very vindicated in my guess on that one.
Yeah, there was a lot of that. So who's our main character? I guess the main character is the Butcher. You could argue who the main character is.
Yeah, So I think the premise of it, and I think the premise of this book is really solid, is that superheroes,
it is.
They're superpowered individuals, and they run around, and they're oversexed and hyper-violent and not really controlled, and they're basically like superpowered cops with less training and less oversight. And the government really can't do anything about them because they're kind of afraid of them, because we got Superman, who's super powerful but also could fuck anybody up if he really wanted to. And then there's this ragtag bunch trying to take them down. And the TV show does this a little better, but it's more through public embarrassment and weird ways to capture them. They never fight them one-on-one. Mm-hmm. So it's this ragtag bunch trying to take down these superpowered individuals who have no oversight and provide oversight. Hence, The Boys.
Yeah, and so I guess there's a stand-in name for them called The Boys. Did they ever figure out a full title? Because there's a woman on the team. Why is this book called The Boys?
What's her name?
They call her the female. She never says anything. They never give her any backstory. I forgot she was there.
She's the only one with superpowers. She's in the show. She's a little better. But
there's also the Frenchman, who is also equally forgettable. And there's Mother's Milk, who gets at least the tiniest bit of backstory, but there's no reason to actually care.
Those are your side
he
characters, and then
Mother's Milk might be the most likable character in this whole book.
He's pretty cool on the show too. Him and the Frenchman get a lot more characterization. Fun fact: I think Kia. Did you say Preacher was also similar? Like, let's take Ennis's concept and premise, and then we're going to do it better in a TV show.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's.
I
would say the TV show does that better. So that's a big caveat going in. Like, if you've watched the Boys TV show, which is probably more famous than this book, which is what, like 06 era, 2006. Yeah. And then there's Billy Butcher, who's played by Carl Urban from the TV show, and
that's good casting.
He's good casting. He says all of these lines like Butcher. I can hear his voice when I read this comic, but I think he's better on the TV show. And then just nondescript white dude is named is Wee Huey, and we'll go into him. And they are your two mainish leads. Yeah. And then there's the superheroes, which we'll get into as we get into them. They don't show up.
Yeah, but
for a couple issues.
I was going to say, Billy, you call him nondescript, but he's just Simon Pegg.
Simon. Well, in the TV show, he's like your Hugh Dancy from Hannibal type. He's just like a skinny white dude with curly hair. Like, that's what he looks like to me. And just like player to be named later. Yeah. He's a good actor, though. Whoever he is, he's a good actor. In this
comic, it's very evidently, just drawing Simon Pegg and being like, here he is. I mean, this was very popular in 2005, 2006 when, Sam Jackson is Nick Fury and they're just like, Robert Downey Jr. is, I think, Iron Man, right? I mean, I think Brad Pitt was Captain America or something like that. They were literally just like photo referencing celebrities that they'd want to be in the movie version.
Mm-hmm. And this, so I think that Huey is also the closest we get to like a reader insert of like, hey, he's just thrown into this world and doesn't know what he's doing and everything is happening to him.
And that's how the show, I think, functions better. It's like, like all this shit happens to him, which we can get into, and then Butcher shows up to tell him about the world.
The first lines out of his mouth when we read the book are like him saying, I'm no homophobe, but like pink aliens are going to make us all gay. And I'm like, what?
This is him. This
the
is
character
his,
that you're trying to make likable?
It's his pillow talk banter that's supposed to be cute with him and his girlfriend, which I used to write that kind of shit. And it was like, I don't even think it was as dire as this. I thought it was like, oh man, like this is, you just say something fucking weird. And then like, you're like, oh, they're a cute couple because they're both weirdos together. Him and his girlfriend, Robin.
Right. But yes, it goes too far. Immediately you're like, ugh, okay.
Yeah. And so, as a result, I'm just like, I don't want to identify with anybody here.
Right. So, and we'll get to it. The only other somewhat sympathetic character is also, I mean, you don't like her.
Yeah.
At least I didn't.
It all happens in one scene, so
she's sympathetic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Worth mentioning, you mentioned Billy Butcher. That's his full name on the show. Because I don't remember them actually calling him Billy Butcher in the book.
They call him the Butcher, sometimes William Butcher.
Butcher. I never remember seeing it all together. They're like, you can call me Billy, or you can call me the Butcher, whatever. But they never I guess it makes sense.
He does tell Wee Huey, don't call me Mr. Butcher.
So the way this book starts is our Simon Pegg character Huey. His girlfriend has told him that she loves him for the first time, and it's so happy and blah,
like
blah,
an
blah,
amusement park or a fair or something.
Right. And some superhero fight happens, and like
the Flash basically runs through her, and rips off, basically destroys her, and all that she's left is like two hands
smashed in,
they
were holding,
like punches a bad guy through her body, and only her arms are there.
Yeah, and so like Billy Butcher, whatever. He is, kind of monitoring a lot of stuff. He's got an in with the CIA. But okay, so basically, anytime this book is having trouble explaining something or needs you to like see a character or like provide any sort of like just a character moment, it's always sex. It's always just somebody's fucking.
It's Game of Thrones, the TV show, 5 years before Game of Thrones. It's doing the same thing. Like, we need exposition. Let's put some tits in here. But
also just grosser, because it's always like, oh, fuck this, cunt this, or like just like so much gross.
And I mean, to be fair, Billy Butcher is British. So he's allowed to say the C word a lot more than we are. as Americans, but it's like, is this really necessary?
It's
and
terrible.
Robertson's art doesn't draw it like sexy. I don't know if I'd want it to be sexy, I'm not trying to kink shame, but I'm like, this is not sexy. This is kind of just gross to me. Like all the sex, it's just like, this is a bit much. And I'm not even like prudish. I'm just like, this is unnecessary, guys. You got a perfectly good TV show here. You don't need to.
And,
do this.
it's just the same note over and over again. It's just like, oh, but what if the superheroes and in the CIA and everyone was into weird sex? What about that? And you're just like, okay, I guess that's fine.
But he's not even like, and he's fucking, I think, the deputy director of the CIA or somebody high up in the CIA. But he's not pumping her for information. Like she's like actively
she
like
just gets
helping
off
him
on it.
Yeah, she's like actively helping him, which is a difference from the show. Is that the boys are more like on their own, whereas it seems like the government has employed them because the government doesn't want to officially do this. Like George W. Bush, I think they mentioned later. George W. Bush doesn't like the soups. Cheney's a fan though. At least what the hint is. But yeah, it's just like it's unnecessary because he's not even like seducing her for information and like exploiting their relationship for it. It's just another thing they do on top of him like getting information.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
like later, and then, there's
like literally the next scene is he goes to like another informant and he's like masturbating and he like beats him up and hits him in the balls and you're just like okay. Like,
yeah.
I guess that's what the book is.
I can see why Wildstorm was like, because we talked about this last episode. Wildstorm published the first 6 issues of this and then it was like, no, thank you. And Garth and then like Garth, you can have the rights back. We don't even care. And then Dynamite took it from there.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm just gonna keep moving through this. In issue 2, like feel free to jump in with it.
So basically, like I think the key points of this issue also is that whoever represents the superhero, specifically the hero that ran through them, I called him the Flash. He's a speedster named A-Train. Played by the youngest Shaft in the new Shaft movie, Jesse Usher, I think is his name. Is that right? But either way, whoever representatives are say like, hey, if you sign this, we're going to give you a nice amount of money. And I think Huey's just kind of like in shock that he doesn't even sign the paperwork. He just is like, I just want my girlfriend back. I don't want your fucking money, which is problematic for the superhero representatives. But it puts him on Butcher's radar. It's like, oh, he won't be a traitor and he won't be manipulated by money or shit. And And so then that's why Butcher is like, okay, now I'm going to recruit Huey for my team of the boys. They never explicitly call it the boys, I don't think, but it is what it is.
I think he does say, like, come see the boys, or, like, come meet the boys, or something like that.
It's a terrible title. It's not.
It's the worst. It doesn't describe this book at all.
And then you have, like, Amazon show, The Boys. I'm like, this doesn't fucking help me at all.
Yeah, it's not very helpful. And the issue 1 ends with the first of several convenient park bench meetings where, Butcher and his dog are just on the bench. I mean, it's not a coincidence. The later one is. He's on the same park bench with Huey, and so obviously he's like tracked him down and is going to, recruit him.
Wait, is it the same one? Because aren't they still in like England at this point?
No, I'm just saying they have 2 major scenes
I see.
where characters just happen to meet on park benches.
Gotcha.
It's sloppy writing.
Yeah. There's okay, so right into the second issue when he's like talking to Huey saying, hey, this is my team, blah, blah, blah. And there's an annoying little dog yipping near them. And so he sends his big, silly, what kind of dog is that? I don't know. Bulldog? Yeah. After and they just his dog just starts having sex with the other dog. I'm just, what?
I like to think that this is written in the Marvel method. Darick Robertson's like, I'm going to draw a dog fucking a smaller dog. Garth, figure it out.
It's also that is what cheers Huey up. Like Huey was whatever, blah blah blah, and like, hey, you did that to that dog, cool.
A little dog rape.
Whoa.
Huey's much more sympathetic in the show.
That's what endears Butcher and Huey is their mutual love of seeing a tiny dog get fucked by a larger dog. It's very strange.
Honestly, this dog is also later watching Butcher have sex, and it's just got this grin of joy on its face. And I'm just weirded out by it. I don't like any of this. There are a few things in the first couple of issues I noted. Okay, the Butcher seems to have this very religious talk he mentions my son a few times, like he calls Huey my son. Every once in a while, he was saying something to someone about like, he works for every hour that God sends. Oh, okay, Mother's Milk. He goes to recruit Mother's Milk afterwards, and he's taking care of his niece, who is just very ungrateful. And so Butcher is telling her, like, hey, he's working for every hour that God sends to make sure that you're okay. And I'm like, that was kind of weird, especially because it never comes up again.
Yeah, I can't tell if that's because it's his just being English or whatever, that he's got some religious background, or if he is religious somehow. But yeah, again, like he, and we mentioned that Carl Urban plays him. He's just drawn to look like the Punisher. Yeah. And yeah, he goes and threatens some teenagers, which is very cool. And we're like, wow, what a cool dude he is.
It seems like this book also, it seems like it wants us to think Butcher is cool also.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whereas the TV show makes Carl Urban, he's always in Hawaiian shirts, not black leather like this book, where Carl Urban's kind of like a loser. It's like, I mean, he's good at his job and killing superheroes and like blackmailing them and stuff, but he's not cool. He's like damaged and weird. Is how the TV show chooses to portray him. Whereas like, I don't feel like this guy is cool and somebody I want to be with. And that puts me off of this book of like who it thinks is cool and what it thinks is fun and what it thinks is charming. This book's vibe really puts me off.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's just the Garth Ennis lens that it's all, that's just what you're getting, man.
I know. It makes me want to not go back to the Punisher Max because I felt I really liked Punisher Max.
Well, okay. So I think it's an okay time to really talk about it. And I kind of maybe we'll save it for the end. We'll get into some more Punisher comparison stuff, Preacher comparison, maybe. I don't know. All right. So the team is all together-ish. I don't know. They got the Frenchman. They got the female.
We've not seen any of the real core superheroes other than A-Train at this point after 2 issues.
Yeah. But
the second issue is getting the team together, and we get to see ultra violence by the female, and we get to see the Frenchman beat up. We all remember, in 2006, if you heard someone speaking French, you'd be like, "Hey, Frenchie, fight for freedom," or something
freedom
like that.
Fries. Yeah.
That's what we all
the
sound
French
like
didn't
in
want us to
America.
invade Afghanistan. Was that what it was?
No, it was
Or
Iraq.
The French didn't want us to invade Iraq because they felt it was a stupid war, and we made fun of them for fighting for freedom. Is that what we did?
Yeah, we stopped calling French fries
we stopped calling
Congress,
anything
lunch area, the cafeteria. Lunch area.
I do remember
we stopped calling them French fries to really show the Frenchies. And this book extrapolates that to just like random guys in suits like harass the Frenchmen, which I've literally never seen like actual anti-French sentiment in real life.
Mm-hmm.
What didn't Ultimates 2 do that shit where like Captain America said the A on my head doesn't stand for France or some bullshit?
Yes, famously.
Yeah.
Okay. These are non-American writers writing about American jingoism. Maybe they know better than we do. Maybe they don't.
I want some Freedom Bread, actually. It's been a while.
I really like the actor on Third Rock from the Sun, Freedom Stewart. That was always my favorite.
I remember that. That's a good joke.
Yep, that's quality. You guys can't see, but I'm squinting at you.
Oh boy, that guy did like one other movie and then nothing else.
He did like Love Stinks or Love Hurts or something.
That's what I'm thinking of. That's exactly.
He did Inspector Gadget too. Yeah.
Yes. After Matthew Broderick was too good for it.
Boy, that franchise, huh?
Yep. So yeah, anyway, the second issue is introducing the characters. The third issue, we meet the character I mentioned earlier, who I think we're supposed to find sympathetic, but I don't like her.
So we have our Superman stand-in named Homelander. And yeah, their Justice League is called the Seven. So Homelander is introducing Starlight to the Seven. There's some other member who's like out for a little while, so she's coming in for a little while.
I'm assuming is probably dead. I don't remember they never mention it, but like I think Homelander later reveals or like hints at like, oh, Lamplighters not on like sabbatical. Lamplighters fucking dead.
She's super virtuous. She was a member of one of the small little teen groups, and she's now worked her way up. And they're having this super virtuous conversation until like the big splash panel on the next page is like, hey, there's one thing you got to do, suck it. And he pulls his pants down, and you're just like, what the fuck? God damn it. I was really just ready to put the book away at this point. Later in this book, A Train and Black Noir, the other another couple members of the Seven, they come in, and she's like, "Oh, thank goodness y'all are here," but they're also just like, "Okay, you got to suck it now." Like everyone in this book is just terrible. Huey moves to America. I don't know if he's necessarily moved permanently, but he's at least here to visit. Gets an apartment in the South Bronx, and so we get some jokes about how terrible of a neighborhood that is. What else? They talk about how they're going to grow after one of the young groups in order to just like shoot back at the heroes, like start small. There's two of them.
Also like the Seven, like we legitimately like, and Homelander's in a lot of the promotion for the TV show. Is the Seven is probably too big on the radar, but they can probably take down one of these teen teams,
right?
And no one's going to like retaliate against them. Is the low stakes that they've got for this, which I really like. I actually this is the thread that I'm like of the book here. This particular book, I really like the TV show again, but the book where I'm like, oh, this is actually the most interesting thing to me is like.
I agree. It makes sense. It's like I see where it's going now. Where I'm like, okay, they're gonna start taking them down little by little. Cool.
Right. Like low level mob stuff, basically, which is the stuff I liked about the Punisher. Is like I'm gonna work my way up. That's the kind of stuff that I enjoy. And this kind of like practical approach to it. This is the most interesting thread so far.
Yeah.
Right. But, again, what's frustrating for me is like there's never any, like he's obviously the Butcher hates, Superman or Samaritan or whatever he wants to call himself.
Homelander.
Yes.
Who looks like, who's in the TV show looks like Zach Morris in a Superman costume, which
I think I wrote Hyperion in one of my notes.
Hyperion's Squadron.
Yeah.
Yes, but obviously he hates him. But like the book, in the next issue, it explains like how he's able to like that he has superpowers or whatever. But it's still just like okay, but like so that makes you stronger than all the other superheroes. Like how?
They. In the next issue
like there's just no danger or stakes to me. I'm just like, okay, they're better than everybody. They're smarter. They're tougher. They're cooler.
They just make themselves superheroes with this blue drug.
Compound V.
What's it called?
Compound V.
Compound V. Thank you. And it like just puts everyone on like a very. It stops making it interesting. Yeah, it's like okay, now it's just fights. But we get our first glimpse of that in issue 4 when they are doing their reconnaissance of the Teenage Kicks. That's the group they're going after. They're like the edgy Gen X group. And guess what? You're not going to believe this interesting character trait that the Teenage Kicks have. They all like to fuck all day. They are like at a whorehouse of some sort.
Yeah, some type of
because
brothel,
yeah, they've like
3 pages of it. 3 pages of it.
It's a lot of it. And they're all just like. It's just a giant orgy.
They're filming it, and
they're filming it. They're gathering all this sort of intel. The boys are, and they're seeing some of the hookers doing heroin or whatever. And Huey is like, yeah, that stuff's blue. That's not heroin. You've got. We also see our first full meeting of the Seven. Starlight is at her first council meeting. She did go through with it. We didn't expand on that too much in the last issue.
Yeah, it's and I'm gonna go with this more when we're doing our wrap up because I think Starlight is much better on the TV show. But yeah,
I think that's the general running thread with this episode.
But no, so yeah, it's basically like a casting couch situation where she's like, if you want to have this job, you have to fuck me. Kind of like terrible situation, and this is like written obviously like in the 10 years earlier of Me Too, but obviously this has happened for throughout all of time, but specifically a lot through like Hollywood and celebrities and bullshit, but she does go through with it because she wants the job, and she meets Queen Maeve, the other girl on the team,
Wonder Woman.
Yeah, basically, and she looks like an Amazonian kind of thing, yeah. And she's like, "Don't fucking talk to me," which I really like actually more in the TV show. That Maeve has this exact same scene, and she in the bathroom, and she looks at her and she goes, "Don't let them see you cry," and it's a much different thing of like Maeve is clearly damaged by these boys in the group of the Seven, but she's also like giving her a mild amount of advice, but also not being like super standoffish. While being super standoffish to her, but as opposed to just like, don't fucking talk to me. I think that the depiction in the comic just doesn't work for me. I think that it's a more interesting dynamic the way that they did it in that TV show that way.
Right.
Well, I think in the comic. Go ahead.
and it's, like, again, like, I think he's over, I think this book is very overwritten. She, like, when she's introduced, she comes off as such a, like, right-wing, like, super Christian that you're not, like, I mean, I at least didn't like her at first. I was just like, oh, geez, like, this is annoying.
Yeah, because she's basically like in this like Christian superheroes group. Like they're super. You've got that like that. I can't imagine we have listeners that like are suddenly like turning on us. But like that faux Christianity, that faux evangelical, that faux like that fucked up like white supremacist Christianity. It runs through that thread. I think the problem with Darick Robertson's art is it's too cartoonish, and it makes Starlight every single picture of her image is just like worried expression. Like it doesn't give her any autonomy. Whereas I think the Starlight of the TV show has a little more strength and a little more autonomy to know this is fucked up, but also like going with it partially because she's trapped, which is interesting. But also she can turn the smile on for the cameras and do this kind of like Southern gentility of that, like gives her a lot of different like areas and nuance that this character, as depicted by Ennis and Robertson, just like doesn't fucking do it.
Well, it also, like, she was so over the top good in her first scene, and when the heroes come in, they actually like they kind of give her an out, and it was really hard for me to believe. Like, wait, she went through with it.
That's well, like, I do think that's an interesting plot point though, because like you're expecting like most narratives like how dare they? I will never do this kind of thing, and for her to actually do it is kind of like sad and like I think an interesting like plot point.
Right. And I do think that is and I'm not going to keep reading this, but I do think she becomes a better character as the book goes on, is my understanding. And, the TV show is probably reflecting the whole thing and not just this initial arc. Right. So I do think, there's an interesting character, and it's, it is kind of the idea of like, can you be a good cop when you have to like lie for cops as part of the job,
Yeah. I mean, just watch Zootopia if you want that though.
Is that what that movie's about?
Yeah,
I'm glad there's not a scene like this in Zootopia.
There's not. But Zootopia is all about like being a good cop and like racism, internalized racism in the police community. It's fucking bonkers. For a 2015, 2016 movie, yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Wow. Okay.
I'll admit I haven't seen Zootopia.
You haven't, Chris? That felt like it was up your alley, but.
It's a movie for children. And I don't know if you've noticed, I don't have children.
That tracks.
That tracks. So what's going on? This meeting of the seven that they're having just ends up turning into like a merchandising bickering about like percentages and shit like that. And Starlight just is like, what? Butcher gets some of that blue drug from his CIA hookup, injects it into Huey without him knowing, and Huey...
Just fuck this. Like, this is where I'm out. I'm like, this is dumb.
Yeah. Next issue, Huey's at the park, and they meet Starlight randomly. They have a little meet cute, and it's a little bit Romeo and Juliet, because they don't really know. Whatever. The boys send a bunch of their pictures and surveillance to the teenage kicks, and
this
they say,
is my
hey,
favorite part. Yeah.
Okay, one of you out yourselves, or we'll do it for you tomorrow.
This I like.
So,
this I like.
Like, that's interesting.
Yes.
I would have liked to have seen more of the scene where they're all bickering with each other. Like, that could have been a full issue right there. The teenage kicks trying to decide who they're going to out.
Like, legitimately, like, they're all of these books are in sale in a Humble Bundle right now. You can buy the entire series of The Boys for, like, pay as you want on humblebundle.com through the end of September 2020. And I'm like debating, like, should I do this or not? And and like talking to you guys, I'm like, now I'm not so sure. But if the book was more like this specific scene and this specific plot, I think I'd be more interested.
Yeah, I mean, like, again,
like this
this
is low level.
There's a good plot behind it all,
and like I like the idea of like non-violent or non-directly violent sort of anti-superhero team. Like they could find ways of like getting superheroes that are on the outs with them, or getting villains like a Thunderbolts type situation. And I guess that's kind of what it's supposed to be, but I just wish it was less about fighting, Like,
the book is also like, could you imagine if the superheroes weren't terrible and they were genuinely all just trying to good job but made mistakes sometimes? Like, I think that would make this book infinitely more interesting, because then you've actually got something to kind of play off of, instead of well, they're definitely the good guys just trying to take down these bad heroes.
Yeah. I mean, that would, like I said, because then, like, if you're working with villains and, there's some ambiguity versus if the heroes are just like sex maniacs and, murderers, then you don't feel bad when they get murdered accidentally, back. Which, again, I'm like, why the hero should be just as strong? How does this happen?
Yeah. Like all this surveillance and espionage and all that eventually leads to so Huey is mad at this drug, but he gets over it. I don't know.
Yeah, he's about to quit, but then he doesn't because he had that conversation with what's her name?
Starlight.
Starlight, where they
similarly
talk
like I'm in a job and I'm not sure if I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And they're like, oh, but I've already done terrible things, whatever. So they agree to do it. And obviously there's like, romantic chemistry between the two of them, even though, he should recognize her like the second she's on TV.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But then, the issue ends with the Teen Titans basically, or the New Warriors, I guess is more accurate, confronting them on an abandoned city street that New York is known for. And again,
right in front of the Flatiron Building.
Yes. As we all know, the city that always sleeps.
Oh boy, yeah.
And again, the Butcher, like they give this whole speech about how they're like, you think you can blackmail us? We're going to teach you what the teenage kicks, blah, blah, blah. And like Butcher's like laughing at them and is like, this is not a threat to me in the least. I'm going to murder these kids. They suck. I am cool.
Yeah.
And then, the next issue is the fight that lasts like 10 pages, and it's just them beating the shit out of them.
Yeah.
Right. And this is
like,
wrong with the premise. And this, and this is where I have a challenge because, sometimes when you have like that first taste of like a book or like a piece of media, when everything deviates from that, you're like, well, I like the first thing I read. But the premise behind The Boys is it's a ragtag, not superhero bunch taking down superheroes non-violently. Or put into violent situations, and how do they get out of it? Because they're not superpowered. And this is like, Huey's got superpowers right now, and Butcher's ready to take on this teenage team, and fucking punch them and headbutt them. Whereas the TV show has this thing where they're attacked by one of the seven, and they manage to subdue him weirdly, and they're like, well, we captured him. Now, what the fuck do we do? And Homelander's on our trail. How the hell do we get out of this? Or, that's more interesting to me. Or this, how do we blackmail these guys into doing what we want and ruining them, but non-violently? Just fighting them in the streets just feels so fucking wrong to the premise.
I wouldn't call any of us prudes or super virtuous in any way. But I think if you take all of the drugs, sex, violence, and cursing out of this book, it also just improves it 100%.
It really does. I remember my mom saying it didn't need that in the movie.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what are you talking about, Mom, you prude? And now I'm saying that shit at 35.
Yeah.
But I think I'm right.
I think you are right.
Yeah. And it's just you could still have, if you want, the teenage kicks or whatever to be a particularly bad bunch, you can have the orgy, brothel stuff. But maybe you don't need, dog fucking and, butcher fucking CIA contacts. And just all of this other peripheral, it's not even moving the story, sex it's the first episode of an HBO show. And you're like, well, we've got to show every female character's boobs in the first episode or people won't watch.
Right. Because there's no dicks in this show either, or in this comic. That, there's a lot of tits. There's no dicks in this.
No
despite
dicks,
they're all all the orgies are strategically hidden, and I'm like, that may be a comics, and it's not comics code, but
I don't think the comics code approved this book event.
No shit. But I'm like, then that's just fucking go for it. Show some dicks if you're gonna do this.
Right. Yeah. It's it just becomes this male power fantasy in a lot of the
And it's so funny too because they just announced this week that Venture Brothers is being canceled. It hasn't had a new season in about 3 years, but it's been officially canceled. And it's so funny because that TV show came out in 2004, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's such a better version of what would it be like? The sort of the Guild of Calamitous Intent is it's so much better than The Boys of there's still all the petty bickering about the conversation that the Seven have about marketing, that could be in the Venture Brothers, except it would just be Jackson Public and Doc Hammer doing silly voices to each other. And they'd be like, how come Aquaman doesn't get 2%?
Yeah.
The other one would.
Yeah, I see that better in Venture Brothers for sure.
Well, and Harley Quinn does that kind of stuff also.
Yeah.
Like in the core DC with real DC characters of like the Legion of Doom with Bane and the Riddler hanging out with Lex Luthor, played by Giancarlo Esposito.
I just feel like it's been done so many times and like better so many times. Like I'm glad the TV show is good because I do think it's a fun premise of like trying to work against heroes. There's not that much media about trying to take down superheroes and like what would you do if you're trying to stop them. This book is just like, well, you could just be the coolest, toughest guy in the room, and then heroes are a bunch of wieners who you'll easily beat.
Right. I mean, and the book, I mean, both of them, the premise that would work best is it's the idea of like, it's a mix of celebrities and cops. So like if Brad Pitt or George Clooney portrayed this like super cool liberal image on Facebook, in the real world, but then we're like shitty celebrities in real life, but also had superpowers. Like that's the kind of premise that it's trying to portray. You know what I'm saying?
Which like, I feel like the Marvel movies have kind of addressed that by like, half the villains in the MCU are like incidentally created by Iron Man being an asshole.
Right. Mm-hmm. Exactly. The TV show also deviates a little where it has an extra level of I don't think the book ever really mentioned, maybe once, is they work for Vought, a company, and it's headed by Elizabeth Shue, who then reports to another guy, Giancarlo Esposito, I just mentioned again, is now in season 2, and he's like the head of Vought Chemical. So it's this additional layer of like, the heroes report to this corporation headed by non-superpowered individuals, and it's an extra layer of them, and they're just pathetic individuals. But
right, which again, like in the Marvel cinematic world and the Ultimate Universe, and I guess even the core Marvel universe somewhat now, like Shield is basically the same thing, where it's like it's this international thing that a bunch of heroes report to. And that the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. has these sort of broad-ranging powers, and it's just like, yeah, but who is in charge of these people?
Right.
But, who watches The Watchmen? You might ask.
The show goes in cool places. Like the Deep gets demoted down to like a Michigan team, and so he's like hanging out in Michigan, like in shitty apartments. Like it goes to cooler places, and I think. We basically, I don't think we wrap this up, but basically, like we're just going to final thoughts. Huey kills somebody. Whatever, blah, blah,
yeah,
whatever, blah, blah, blah. He kills one of the...
There's a hamster.
Yeah, there's a hamster up his butt. And then there's like... And the show does this too, but it's like funerals for like shitheads, but like portrays them as like good people because we don't speak ill of the dead. Blah, 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 blah. I think my core issue though is like, I think Robertson's art is also super bad for this. Like, I think it's too cartoony.
It does... I think, yes, it wraps into that. Like, this book really tries hard to make so many of the characters unlikable, but in doing so, it accidentally just makes the book unlikable, and like it just forces you to like just see all this gross stuff, and you're like, I don't want to see that. It's just ugh. I'm just disgusted by this book. I'm ready for it to go away.
Okay, Wildstorm. Okay, Mom.
Wait, Wildstorm and Mom are the same.
You're my mom. She's like, this
entity?
didn't need this.
You know my
like,
mom.
Gladiator
just like
didn't need this type of scene. Is what I'm gonna say.
It really like it's it thinks it's using that to like draw people in, but it's
there's almost like this air of like insulted by it. I'm like, ugh, really?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
You think Butcher is cool? Like Butcher's not cool. Butcher's a loser. And the fact that like it seems, and then by virtue of that, the writer thinks that Butcher should be cool. Then I'm like, fuck you.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just like,
agreed.
I got nothing else to say about this. Should we? I'm ready to move on to Squadron Supreme whenever you are.
I was legitimately considering reading more of The Boys, and now like talking about this, I'm like, there's 2 or 3 threads that I think are interesting, but I think it's only because those threads aren't covered in the show. And I would just
I would say.
If you're the show though, it's much more.
Yeah, I would recommend just watch the show and don't read the book first.
Don't read the book. Don't read the book at all. And if you're interested in the show and you're like, hey, maybe I'll go read the source material, please.
Or you just listen to 40 minutes of us shitting on this comic book. The show is still really good.
Yeah, art does not work. The writing is, like we said, it relies too much on coincidence and too much on shock value, and it's just not very well done. Like I just didn't like it at all.
Yeah. Sorry, Garth. But oh yeah, the one thing I did want to say, yeah, it's Punisher makes the Punisher character so silent that we don't have time to dislike him, I think, in the Punisher book. I think if Garth Ennis tried to write the Punisher doing more stuff, it would just instantly be a worse book.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, and that's kind of the secret sauce for Batman too, is you see so much more of Batman doing things in Batman comics than like Batman just sitting there talking. Because if he just sat there and talked to you and like lectured you, you'd be like, shut up. Like, and of course, Butcher does make it clear he's cooler than Batman, because he's like, what am I supposed to do? Sit in my cave as a billionaire? And you're like, ha, ha, ho, we're all laughing.
2005 references, they were hilarious.
Yep. Okay. Let's move on to Squadron Supreme.
Which is kind of like a mirror version of this. It's so funny that we read these two books together.
I
think it's because I was reading Squadron Supreme and I was like, this reminds me a lot of The Boys.
That's so interesting. I would not put these two in the same. It
reminds me of the TV show.
Okay, fair. All right. But yeah, it's been about a month since the last issue.
It seems to be happening in real time also. So even for the comic, the characters, it's been a month since the last issue.
Right, which I like that.
And they made an ultimatum at the end of last issue, like, we're going to save the world. We're going to become dictators,
but good ones.
But good dictators, and then we're going to give up our power in a year. It remains to be seen if they will. But that's their stated plan, and this is a 12-issue series. It's basically, if you're jumping in and cherry picking episodes because you're like, oh, The Boys, Squadron Supreme.
Yeah, listen to the last issue. Yeah, listen to the last episode.
It's Marvel Comics specifically writing like DC analogs.
Yeah,
in a world that is
before Watchmen.
Right, in a world that is like sub 2020 levels of like, we're basically 2021, where all systems have failed. There's just like riots in the streets.
Yeah, America is
the president has resigned, so in that way, a better world.
Yeah, okay, can we get the Squadron Supreme world? The world is also in a state of disarray, but they're focusing on America because the world's got their problems, and we kind of accidentally screwed it up for everybody, but we're just gonna mess. Because
they were brainwashed, by aliens or Brainiac or something.
They couldn't
like
help
that.
it. They couldn't.
Right.
Help it.
Yeah.
Which
like
is
this
the
is
plot
like
point. Yeah.
Yeah, this is like 1980s America has specifically just collapsed, and so they're trying to fix that first.
Batman didn't agree. President Nighthawk, he resigned his presidency and then said, "I'm out of here for a little while." He's not even in this issue, which
he's not in the issue at all. He had a kryptonite gun basically that he had aimed at Superman. He's like, I can't do it.
Argonite, which is on the column of the periodic table, just one down. So there you go, Argon. But this is a clever issue because like the analogs that we talked about, it's like, okay, this is the Wonder Woman analog, this is the Batman analog, this is the Superman analog. They're not in this issue at all.
Like barely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's more the Green Lantern and Green Arrow analogs are definitely in here.
Well, they start us off, but I think it does end up focusing on Tom Thumb and Nuke, who are Firestorm and the Atom.
The Atom, yeah.
They really become the focus of this. I'd forgotten everything that happens. I thought they were building up to like Tom Thumb turning into a bad guy, because the very first scene here is Dr. Spectrum. He's like the Green Lantern guy. Golden Archer, you can figure that out. And Tom Thumb. They're out doing some like heroics, like goodwill missions, delivering food, whatever, blah, blah, blah. They're like, giving a little speech in front of the whole audience, and Tom Thumb doesn't even get to talk.
Yeah, it's because Tom Thumb looks like Pip the Troll, and he's like, didn't forget me. I'm so sad. And I'm like, fuck you. I don't really care about this point. But it gets interesting.
He's nicer looking than Pip the Troll, I think. I wouldn't want to give that impression of him. He's like a friendly grandpa. He's like a tiny Santa Claus, is how I see him. But he doesn't get to talk.
Yeah, it is rude of Green Lantern, Dr. Spectrum or whatever he's called.
Yeah, he's got power of the whole light spectrum. Way more powerful.
He's not gonna be weak to yellow. He's got a rock or something that gives him basically
Green
Lantern ring powers.
They get attacked by these just random people who are like, "Hey, we think y'all are bad." And
Which, to be fair, they were dictators who fascists took over,
Yes,
literally
really
last month.
They do. They call them like super fascists, and it's like that's fair.
That is fair.
But they're like,
fair.
we can't tell them that we were brainwashed. I'm like, I mean, try at least, maybe.
I think they should try. Yeah.
I mean, whether or
at
not
this
the
point, it's,
court
like,
of public
too late.
opinion will believe them is another story. But
It's a little too late for all that.
I mean, they do have guns drawn on innocent people at this point, so they're probably not going to be like, "Oh, y'all were brainwashed." Okay.
So they're able to, put them down, but Tom Thumb can't really do anything because his super brain is like his only power. Is it like a super brain or is he just super smart? I don't know. But we also get Nuke. He goes to visit his dying parents. He gets confirmation from them that they have cancer as a result of the radiation poisoning. He still doesn't tell them that it's his fault, but he at least knows that it is his fault now. And so there's a big team meeting now. They kind of talk about how it's been a month, what they've done ever since. And over the course of this, the Scarlet Centurion shows up, a hologram of him in the middle of their big war room table. And he says, you're in a terrible state with your world. Now is the best time for me to take it over. And I really love this scene. Hyperion gets up and gets right in the hologram space and says, listen, man, every time you try and take over our world, we send you retreating back into your world. But listen up. If you try it this time, we're just going to fucking kill you. And Scarlet Centurion's like, ooh, okay, I can tell you're serious. I'm out of here.
And this is some pro level lettering here also. Like the lettering gets smaller and the balloon is like, I'm scared. It's really good. It's really good.
It's also this is also the image on the cover of this issue where it's like Hyperion saying, "I swear to you, Scarlet Centurion, if you attack Earth now in its most dire state, then whatever." And it looks like it's going to be this big fight, but that's the whole scene. He just says that and he's like, "Whoa, I'm out of here." And I just love that bait and switch. It's a perfect bait and switch right there.
Again, this I could totally see this in Adventure Brothers episode of just like whoa, that's we were just gonna have a little fight like we normally do.
Yeah. After this meeting,
you had to go and kill a guy.
Yeah. Oh, and Scarlet Centurion, what does he talk about? He's basically Kang the Conqueror. He's from the 21st century or whenever, something like that. He's the time traveler villain. So we then get a scene of Tom Thumb talking to his computer. It's his only friend, Aida. Does that stand for something? I assume it would, artificial intelligence.
Something.
Data.
I didn't think about that, but that's really clever.
It makes sense. I don't know. I don't remember if they mentioned it. I was just, in reading it, I was like, oh, probably. But Nuke goes to him for help. And he's like, hey, Doc. He doesn't call him Doc. But says, hey, can you test my energy levels? I think they might be growing. And Tom Thumb confirms, yeah, they're up 50% since last year. And he says, oh, Tom Thumb, you got to help me. You got to help me cure cancer. And that's really the main focus of this issue now is Tom Thumb being well, he needs my help. I want to help the guy. Okay. I'll try to cure cancer. And Nuke's like, oh my God, you're the smartest dude ever. I'm sure you're going to be able to do it. Thanks so much.
My parents don't have much time.
Yeah.
Can you get it done in a day or two? It's kind of a priority.
And you just you're seeing the stress on both of these people in very different ways, and you just know it's going to explode in a really bad way. Nuke has already been shown to be the hothead of the group, and he's kind of losing his temper when they're out on missions. He does it in he did it in the first issue. He does it here when a bunch of people are kind of shouting at them, and he's throwing fire at everybody.
Yeah,
the rest of the
while
team
he's handing out, supplies, and he's like, "I'll fuck you up if y'all don't stand in line." He's like, "Whoa,
right, yeah,
a little intense, bro."
Yeah.
And of course, there's no cursing in this book. I want to coming off of the boys. I want to establish there's no cursing.
We are cursing.
We are
they don't actually say that. Yeah, Black Canary analog has to yell at him in the back to make him stop attacking the crowd to herd them where they're supposed to go. But they're like, dude, we're not here to do this. We're trying to help people. Please don't shoot fire at them.
Right. We did also, I don't remember which team he was on, but we saw Blue Eagle. His dad was the American Eagle. I don't remember what his name was in the first issue, but they do even mention this is the third name I've heard you go by now. But he's like, yeah, I want to remember my dad. So I guess Blue Eagle is the Hawkman analog now. But Tom Thumb is working on this thing. He makes Nuke a kind of baggy radiation suit to protect everyone from his powers. And Nuke's like, I thought the priority was the cancer. And he's like, hey, we got to keep anyone else from getting cancer first. But
he's like,
yeah.
Like, when do I have to wear it? Oh, whenever you're around people. He's like, that's almost all the time.
I do like Tom Thumb is like, I literally have to figure out something that nobody in the history of humankind has ever figured out. Okay. Mm-hmm. I don't know how much.
And he's like, yeah, he's not doing as many of his other team duties, but I really like, there's like a scene where I think it's Hyperion who comes in and is like, hey, you know what? Wherever you think your resources are, best served, you're the smartest one, so I trust you.
Yeah, he's like, hey, can I not go to as many meetings this week because I'm going to work on something else? It's a real good corporate conversation. Yeah. Like, I've got this other special project I'm working on, so can we clear my deck? He's talking to his manager. I'm like, this is good stuff. I like this.
It is, yeah. It works. Because it's also it gives you that tinge of he's really starting to make a bad decision by going down this road of you're not going to be able to cure cancer, dude. Not in a week.
And it does, it makes you actually like Hyperion as opposed to, other Superman analogs. Because he's like, yeah, dude, I'm not your real boss. I trust you. You're my friend.
But yeah, Tom Thumb is super stumped. He's just staying up later and later, not getting all sleep. Finally, it kind of hits him. I'm going to time travel to the Scarlet Centurion's era. They've cured all disease. I'm going to ask him for the cure for cancer. And he shows up there. Scarlet Centurion is just kind of having fun toying with him. He's like, hey, listen, okay, you've got it if you kill Hyperion.
And he doesn't even want to kill him. He's just like, I just want you to poison his food a little bit.
Yes, yeah. Make it easy for me to kill him.
So
put a little bit of this Argonite in his food.
And have a fair fight with him.
Yeah. And so Tom Thumb kind of considers it for a second, but Nuke shows up and is like, hey, do you have it? And he says, no, I haven't been able to do it. Nuke is, again, just pissed, expecting cancer to be cured.
And he says, I believe he says, my parents' death is now on you, not on me.
Ooh, he does say it, yeah. I don't know about that, Nuke. I don't know about that.
Yeah, I know he's in an emotional state, but check the tape.
Yeah, Nuke's got some problems. But the very last panel of the whole book is Tom Thumb saying out loud to himself, that he tried as hard as he could. He did because he also has cancer. In running all his tests, he's discovered this. Oh, no.
That was sad. He mentions earlier that he needs a sample of his own blood for a control group, and then he's like, oh shit, I also have cancer.
Yeah. So some heavy stuff. I didn't think it was good. I kind of vaguely remember this as I was reading it, but I didn't remember it getting into cancer in the second issue already.
It's a real I mean, I like this book because it's dealing with real world stuff of how do you distribute food in a crisis situation, and how do you manage that situation and control it. But I also like just the plotting of this book is I thought at the beginning I'm like Tom Thumb's nobody's paying attention to me. Everybody else is more famous than me. I'm like I don't give a shit about this.
Right.
But it really turned Tom Thumb on me. He's put in this unwinnable situation, but he's doing his best. Other people are supporting him, which is uncommon. There's not conflict. Hyperion is do it, bro. That's that's uncommon. You would expect to be a conflict scene there because it's ripe for just in terms of plotting. And it's nice, and the way that the villain, the Scarlet Centurion, is introduced in this issue, 1 through the cover, and then 2 through a joke scene, and then 3 through a serious scene. Is really good, layering in, building the world that I feel I've gotten a lot of the Scarlet Centurion, despite no fights and no he's no action sequences. I feel I've gotten a good vibe for him. This book has done a really good job of setting up its world in 2 issues.
Yeah, and they also I think work pretty well as one and done issues. They focus on different aspects of the team so that you're not super overwhelmed by it.
It's a true gem. It's astonishing.
It really, it's stringing the overall story along. Man, I'm remembering why I love this book so much.
Yeah, it's good, and even the characters that we don't see do very much. I do like the card game stuff. That basically the only thing that half the team does is they have a card game, and then like Tom Thumb, you just see him at his computer and you'd be like, I wonder if they'd even invite me when he's still being a sad sack. But it is establishing like that these are, you know, very human characters, and they're trying to like solve this in a way. And it's so funny because like this is what 20 years before The Boys, and it's so much better at like these are, you know, Nuke is very flawed and you're not very likable in this, but it's in a realistic way.
Yeah, it doesn't make me want to turn away from reading him.
Yeah,
it's like
not
I
like
just dislike him.
Yeah, it's not like he like blasts through someone and kills them, and then Superman is like, "That's okay. We're all monsters." You know, like it's a very human thing where it's like, yes, he's overreacting and he's being a jerk, but in a very like believable way. Versus, you know, The Boys just, and you know, we haven't seen Black Canary and the Green Arrow characters just like raw dogging each other. Like,
man,
it's, you know, it's much more human and relatable. And you know, again, I agree with Vince. You know, I think there's a time and a place, and you can have adult stories and whatever, but like you don't really need it if the point is like, what if heroes have like moral decisions that go beyond like stopping bank robbers? You know, like you can tell that story without being like, yeah, but I also want to, you know, have a bunch of sex, like a bunch.
Well, it's also interesting about The Boys, going back to it, is that I don't think the heroes fought any threats. There was nothing. I don't know if they fought anything. There were no bad guys.
Right. The only thing they do is that they do say that the teen team has just like locked up a team of bad guys, and they're celebrating. And so it's not their everyday behavior to have orgies, but this is a celebratory orgy. Yeah. And you're like, oh, okay.
But they're not like stopping like a plane whose engine has, you know, helping a plane whose like engine has crashed, or like stopping world-ending threats or anything of that nature.
Right, and you could show them doing that thing and still being like rude about it, you know, like, and again, Squadron Supreme sort of does that in the way that Dr. Spectrum or whatever kind of grandstands a little bit, because he's like so powerful and can sort of lord it over everybody that he's not really in any danger, but in a way that is, again, very like real and human, and not just like, oh, he's a huge asshole.
Yeah. It's nice to read a book that isn't all just huge assholes. Great.
Books with huge assholes are fine, but nobody's even like charming.
Nobody's charming at all. Nobody. I guess our most unlikable characters right now in Squadron Supreme are probably like obviously Scarlet Centurion for being a villain, and obviously some of the people.
He's kind of fun.
Right. Like it's like, yeah. He is fun. I like him more than any character in The Boys, and he's a bad guy, you know? It's great.
Yeah, it's more like Nuke is just like, you're a dumb 20-something, or dude bro 20-something-year-old, like, who doesn't understand your impact.
Yeah, and Dr. Spectrum is a little bit of a showboater, and like all about just getting ladies and that kind of thing. Not to an extreme degree, but if there was any character that we would see like just in doing gratuitous sex scenes, it would probably be Dr. Spectrum, I think.
Right. And I like Hyperion, although I don't like the idea of them being dictators. But now we've set the table, and Kia, you don't remember this, but Chris, you probably do, is now we've set the table for two different characters in the team now want to kill Hyperion, or have had the opportunity to kill him. Between Tom Thumb and President Batman have now both decided whether or not to kill him. I'm assuming that might come to a head, or it's just an interesting wrinkle within a super team.
Yeah, Vince, I hear some jingling in the background. Are you trying to hypnotise me into killing Hyperion?
It's my father-in-law's birthday party. I think they're having it on a Zoom call.
Oh, wow, okay.
Happy birthday, Bill.
Happy birthday, Bill.
Billy Butcher. That's
Billy Butcher? Wow, yeah. Your dad is Billy Butcher?
My father-in-law's name is Billy Butcher. Yep.
Wow.
I'm sorry, Mr. I guess not Goodwin, because it's your father-in-law. I'm sorry about all the swearing earlier. I know you're listening and you're shaking your head.
He really did like the Boys TV show.
Has the whole party been silent in the background on the Zoom call while you're talking to us?
They live in Hawaii. We record during the early day, so they were actually still asleep. So they just woke up for us to hit them with a party.
Wonderful.
Wow.
That's pretty fun. Wait, there's not that much of a time difference. Wait a minute.
I mean, it's what, 4 hours back from
5.
Central?
I don't think they do daylight savings. so it's like
Okay.
10 a.m.
Gotcha, okay.
I mean,
I was gonna say it's pretty
your birthday
early.
weekend. They, I think actually Hawaii's on lockdown right now, like actual like stay-in-home orders. But it's fucking crazy, which is what I know we had like a few months ago. But it just
They're already on an island. They're already quarantined.
I know. They do like how Australia is with like the 14-day, chilling.
That's really.
Yeah.
I'm just joking. I know it's a serious issue. Please stay quarantined, everybody. Please wear your mask if you go out.
But yeah,
please wear a baggy radiation suit that I made for all of you.
But only when you see people, which is always.
All right. So should we talk about next time?
Yeah.
Definitely, of course, Squadron Supreme number 3. Going to keep going there. We got also. Did we talk about this last time? I don't remember when exactly it happened, but Chadwick Boseman did pass away.
Yeah, it had happened like the day before a day or two before we recorded the last episode. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So we did mention it on the last one,
but since then, Comixology put like a ton of Black Panther comics for free. I don't know if that offer's still happening, but I put it on the Facebook. If you follow, all my friends are right here on Facebook. You may see some of my promotions for cheaper comics. But yeah, and I saw like recommendations of like the Ta-Nehisi Coates run, which is current, and the Christopher Priest run, which we had definitely covered already of Black Panther. But we're like, let's do some Black Panther comics. And one of my friends I saw recommend Doomwar, which I don't know anything about, but it's Dr. Doom invades Wakanda, which I'm always, and I guess is Black Panther and Doom are both Fantastic Four adjacent, so it's not that weird.
Right.
No, yeah. So yeah, I've heard good things about this as well. Written by Jonathan Mayberry with art by Scott Eaton, from 2010-ish,
Right.
somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And I guess we'll include the option to read the Black Panther issues that kind of lead into this. There was issues 11 and 12 of whatever that current
Sometimes
Black Panther run from there.
Sometimes they're in the collection, sometimes they're not. They have like a banner that says like Road to Do More on the top of them.
But the actual issues are just called Doomwar number 1 through 6. It got its own little event comic. And
Marvel Unlimited. Storm and Black Panther, I believe, are married at that time. Although I think Black Panther may have been injured, so it's actually Shuri, his sister, who is the Black Panther at that point. Spoiler alert for the Dark Reign storyline. Because I think at the beginning they're like, who's in the Black Panther suit? I don't know. And it's Shuri.
I know I've seen a really great Doomwar cover. It might have been one of the alternate covers of Mohawk Storm. I don't know if she is Mohawk Storm during this era, but fingers crossed. I'm always down for some Mohawk
It should be fun.
Storm.
So it's Black Panther, it's Fantastic Four adjacent, and X-Men adjacent. So it should be a good time.
Yeah. So we'll read that. We'll read Squadron Supreme 3. What else is going on? Chris, how's the other podcast?
It's going well. We just recorded an episode. I think the second or third musical episode we've done. The movie, not us singing.
Y'all don't sing through the whole episode. Y'all didn't get cursed like Buffy.
Yes, we were all cursed to sing the entire podcast. No, but it's a lot of fun. You can probably figure out there was a musical that came out about 9 or 10 months ago that was pretty famously bad.
Cats? Cats?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
You solved the mystery.
I tried to watch Cats the musical. It's kind of bonkers. Like not the movie version, but like the stage version, just so I had more context because I didn't know. That thing's weird, man.
Oh, we talk about it. We watched I think the Broadway version. I didn't. Our special guest watched the Broadway version, and we confirmed that both are bad.
Yeah.
Did you ever see Kimmy Schmidt where they talked about cats and Greg Kinnear was?
We referenced that Kimmy Schmidt bit as well.
Very good.
We're 10 steps ahead of you, Vince.
Good. And it's good to know that your stupid minds is doing its due diligence. I was giving y'all information in case y'all were wanting to re-record 3 days after we recorded. But
add an addendum episode just to make sure we reference all that. So everybody, thanks for tuning in. Make sure you listen out for our addendum episode. There's a few more jokes that we are going to think of, and we'll tack those on into a separate podcast. But other than that, I think that's it. Vince, thank you so much. I love you.
I love you too.
Chris, thank you so much. I love you.
Radio edit.
Oh, jeez. And I'm Kia. Thank you, listeners. We love you as well. I know you're all probably saying very loudly that you love me, and I will take your love. Thank you. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time. Bye.